MV Wilhelm Gustloff was a German military transport ship sunk on 30 January 1945 by Soviet submarine S-13 in the Baltic Sea while evacuating civilians and military personnel from East Prussia and the German-occupied Baltic states, and German military personnel from Gotenhofen, Gdynia, as the Red Army advanced. By one estimate, 9,343 people died, making it the largest loss of life in a single ship sinking in history. Originally constructed as a cruise ship for the German Strength Through Joy Kraft durch Freude organization in 1937, Wilhelm Gustloff was requisitioned by the Kriegsmarine, German Navy, in 1939. She served as a hospital ship from 1939 to 1940, and then as a floating barracks for naval personnel in Gotenhofen until 1945, when she was fitted with anti-aircraft guns and used to transport evacuees. Construction and naming. Wilhelm Gustloff was the first purpose-built cruise ship for the German labor front, Deutsche Arbeitsfront, and used by subsidiary organization Strength Through Joy, Kraft durch Freude. She was designed to provide recreational and cultural activities for German functionaries and workers, including concerts, cruises, and other holiday trips, and to serve as a public relations tool that would present a more acceptable image of the Third Reich. The ship was constructed by the Blom and Voss shipyards, measuring 208.5 meters by 23.59 meters wide, with a capacity of 25,484 gross register tons (GRT).
Use as cruise ship.
She was launched
The
on
ship
5
made
May
her unofficial maiden
1937.
voyage between 24 and 27 March 1938, carrying Austrians in an attempt to convince them to vote for the annexation of Austria by Germany. On 29 March, she departed on her second voyage, carrying workers and their families from the Blom and Voss shipyard on a 3-day cruise. Rescue of Pegaway. For her third voyage, Wilhelm Gustloff left Hamburg on 1 April 1938 under the command of Karl Lube to join the KDF ships Der Deutsche, Oceania, and Sierra Cordoba on a group cruise of the North Sea. A storm developed on 3 April with winds up to 100 kilometers per hour, that's 55 knots, that forced the four ships apart. Meanwhile, the 1,836 gross-ton British coal freighter Pegaway, which had departed Tyne on 2 April for Hamburg, was also caught up in the storm. Cargo and machinery were washed from Pegaway's decks, and the ship soon lost maneuverability. By 4 April, it was taking on water and slowly sinking. At 4 a.m., Captain G.W. Ward of Pegaway issued an SOS when the ship was 20 nautical miles, or 37 kilometers, northwest of the island of Terschelling, off the coast of the Netherlands. The closest of the ships that answered the distress call was Wilhelm Gustloff, which reached Pegaway at 6 a.m. She launched her lifeboat No. 1 with a crew of 12 under the command of Second Officer Meyer. The oar-powered lifeboat was unable to come aside Pegaway in the heavy seas and looked in danger of needing to be rescued itself. Lifeboat No. 6, with a crew of 10 under the command of Third Officer Sherman, was then lowered. As it was motor-powered, it was better able to handle the waves. After first assisting their shipmates in Lifeboat No. 1 to head back towards Wilhelm Gustloff, Sherman was able to reach Pegaway. One by one, the 19 men on Pegaway jumped into the sea and were hauled onto Lifeboat No. 6, with both them and the crew of the lifeboat back at Wilhelm Gustloff by 7:45 a.m. A Dutch tugboat soon arrived but was unable to save Pegaway, which soon rolled to port and sank. Lifeboat No. 1 had been so badly damaged by the waves that after its crew had climbed up via ladders to the safety of their ship, that it was set adrift to later be washed up on the shores of Terschelling on 2 May. Anschluss and further civilian usage. On 8 April 1938, Wilhelm Gustloff departed Hamburg for England,
where she anchored over 5.6 kilometers, or 3 nautical miles, offshore from Tilbury so as to remain in international waters. This allowed her to act as a floating polling station for German and Austrian citizens living in England who wished to vote on the approaching plebiscite on Germany's unification with Austria. During 10 April, 1,172 Germans and 806 Austrians were carried from the docks at Tilbury to the ship, where 1,968 votes were cast in favor of the Union and 10 against. Once the voting was complete, Wilhelm Gustloff left Tilbury, reaching Hamburg on 12 April.
After undertaking a further voyage on 14 to 19 April 1938, the ship went on an Osterfahrt, Easter voyage, before her actual official maiden voyage, which was undertaken from 21 April to 6 May 1938, when she joined Der Deutsche, Oceania, and Sierra Cordoba on a group cruise to the Madeira Islands. On the second day of her voyage, the 58-year-old Captain Luba died on the bridge from a heart attack. He was replaced by First Officer Friedrich Petersen, who commanded Wilhelm Gustloff for the remainder of the cruise. Petersen relinquished his command. He would later serve as captain on the ship's final voyage. Wilhelm Gustloff remained as flagship of the KDF cruise fleet, her last civilian role, until the spring of 1939, when all large ships were requisitioned for wartime use. From 14 March 1938 until 26 August 1939, the ship had carried over 80,000 passengers on a total of 60 voyages. Condor Legion. Between 20 May and 2 June 1939, Wilhelm Gustloff was temporarily repurposed by the German Navy. Along with 7 other ships in the KDF fleet, she transported the Condor Legion back to Germany from Spain following the victory of the nationalist forces under General Francisco Franco in the Spanish Civil War.
Military career. From September 1939 to November 1940, Wilhelm Gustloff served as a hospital ship, officially designated Lazarettschiff D. On 20 November 1940, medical equipment was removed from the ship, and she was repainted from the hospital ship colors of white with a green stripe to standard naval gray. As a consequence of the Allied blockade of the German coastline, she was used as a barracks ship for approximately 1,000 U-boat trainees of the 2nd Submarine Training Division, 2 Unterseeboot Lehrdivision, in the port of Gdynia, which had been occupied by Germany and renamed Gotenhafen, located near Danzig. Wilhelm Gustloff sat in dock there for over 4 years. In 1942, SS Cap Arkana was used as a stand-in for RMS Titanic in the German film version of the disaster. Filmed in Gotenhafen, the 2nd Submarine Training Division acted as extras in the movie. Wilhelm Gustloff continued to serve as a barracks until 1945, when she was hastily repurposed for Operation Hannibal.
Operation Hannibal. Evacuation. Operation Hannibal was the naval evacuation of German troops and civilians from East Prussia and the German-occupied Baltic states as the Red Army advanced from the east. Wilhelm Gustloff's final voyage was to evacuate civilians, German military personnel, and technicians from Kurland, East Prussia, and Danzig, West Prussia. Many had worked at advanced weapon bases in the Baltic, from Gotenhafen to Kiel. The ship's complement and passenger lists cited 6,050 people on board, but these did not include the many individuals who boarded the ship without being listed in the official embarkation records. Heinz Schoen, a German archivist and Gustloff survivor, researched the sinking during the 1980s and 1990s. He concluded that the ship was carrying a crew of 173 Naval Armed Forces auxiliaries, 918 officers, NCOs, and men of the 2 Unterseeboot Lehrdivision, 373 female naval auxiliary helpers, 162 wounded soldiers, and 8,956 civilians, for a total of 10,582 passengers and crew. The passengers, besides civilians, included Gestapo personnel, members of the organization TOT, and Nazi officials with their families. The ship was overcrowded and, due to the high temperature and humidity inside, many passengers defied orders not to remove their life jackets. Besides ethnic Germans, the people on board included Lithuanians, Latvians, Poles, Estonians, and Croatians, some of whom had been victims of Nazi aggression.
The ship left Gotenhafen at 12:30 p.m. on 30 January 1945, accompanied by 2 torpedo boats and another evacuation transport, Hansa. Hansa and 1 torpedo boat were soon disabled by mechanical problems, leaving Wilhelm Gustloff with just 1 torpedo boat escort, Low XGL 18. The ship had 4 captains on board, the Wilhelm Gustloff's captain, 2 merchant marine captains, and the captain of the U-boat complement housed on the vessel. This resulted in heated arguments about how to guard the ship against Soviet submarines. Against the advice of the U-boat commander, Lieutenant Commander Wilhelm Zahn, an experienced submariner who argued for a course in shallow waters close to shore and without lights, Wilhelm Gustloff's captain, Friedrich Petersen, turned the ship into deep waters. Upon being informed by radio of an oncoming German minesweeper convoy, Petersen ordered that the ship's red and green navigation lights should be turned on so as to avoid a collision in the dark, making Wilhelm Gustloff easy to spot. As Wilhelm Gustloff had been fitted with anti-aircraft guns and the Germans did not mark her as a hospital ship, no notification of her operating in a hospital capacity had been given. Since she was transporting military personnel, she did not have any protection as a hospital ship under international accords. 2021.
Sinking. Wilhelm Gustloff was soon sighted by the Soviet submarine S-13 under the command of Captain Alexander Marinesco. The submarine sensor on board the escorting torpedo boat had frozen, rendering it inoperable, as had her anti-aircraft guns, leaving the vessels defenseless. Marinesco followed the ships to their starboard, seaward side for 2 hours before making a move, surfacing his submarine and steering it around Wilhelm Gustloff's stern to attack it from the port side closer to shore, from where the attack would be less expected. At around 9 p.m. CET, Marinesco ordered his crew to launch 4 torpedoes at Wilhelm Gustloff's port side, about 30 kilometers or 16 nautical miles or 19 miles offshore, between Grossendorf and Leba. The 3 torpedoes that were fired successfully all struck Wilhelm Gustloff on her port side. The first struck the ship's bow. This caused the ship's watertight doors to lock before the sleeping off-duty crew could escape. The second hit the accommodations for the Women's Naval Auxiliary, located in the ship's drained swimming pool. It dislodged the pool tiles at high velocity, which caused high casualties. Only 3 of the 373 women quartered there survived. The third torpedo scored a direct hit on the engine room located amidships, disabling all power and communications. Reportedly, only 9 lifeboats could be lowered. The rest had frozen in their davits and had to be freed with tools. About 20 minutes after the torpedo's impact, Wilhelm Gustloff suddenly listed so dramatically to port that the lifeboats lowered on the high starboard side crashed into the ship's tilting side, sending their occupants into the sea.
Many deaths were caused either directly by the torpedoes or by drowning in the inrushing water. Some fatalities were due to the initial stampede caused by panicked passengers on the stairs and decks, while others were caused by passengers jumping overboard into freezing waters. The water temperature in the Baltic Sea in late January is usually around 4 degrees Celsius. However, this was a particularly cold night, with an air temperature of -10 to -18 degrees Celsius and ice floes covering the surface. The majority of those who died were victims of hypothermia. Less than 40 minutes after being struck, Wilhelm Gustloff was lying on her side. She sank bow first 10 minutes later in 44 meters or 144 feet of water. German forces were able to rescue 1,252 people. The torpedo boat T-36 rescued 564. The torpedo boat Low, 472. The minesweeper M387, 98. The minesweeper M375, 43. The minesweeper M341, 37. the steamer Göttingen 28, the torpedo recovery boat Torpedo boat TF-19 7, the freighter Gotenrond 2, and the patrol boat Vorpostenboot V-1703 1 baby. 13 of the survivors died later. All 4 captains on Wilhelm Gustloff survived her sinking. An official naval inquiry was initiated only against Lieutenant Commander Zahn. His degree of responsibility was never resolved, however, because of Nazi Germany's collapse in 1945. Losses. The figures from Heinz Schoen's research make the loss in the Wilhelm Gustloff sinking to be 9,343 men, women, and children. His more recent research is backed up by estimates arrived at by a different method. An Unsolved History episode that aired in March 2003 on the Discovery Channel undertook a computer analysis of the sinking. Using Maritime Exodus software, it estimated that 9,600 people died of the more than 10,600 on board. By taking into account passenger density based on witness reports and a simulation of escape routes and survivability with the timeline of the sinking.
Aftermath. Many ships were sunk during the war by the Allies and by the Axis powers. However, based on the latest estimates of passenger numbers and those known to be saved, the sinking of Wilhelm Gustloff remains by far the largest loss of life in maritime history resulting from the sinking of a single vessel. About 1,000 German naval officers and men were aboard and died in the sinking of Wilhelm Gustloff. Women aboard the ship at the time of the sinking were inaccurately described by Soviet propaganda as SS personnel from the German concentration camps. There were, however, 373 female naval auxiliaries amongst the passengers, only 3 of whom survived. On the night of 9th–10th February, just 11 days after the sinking, S-13 sank another German ship, General von Steuben, killing about 4,500 people. Before sinking Wilhelm Gustloff, Captain Marinesco had been facing a court-martial due to his alcohol problems and for being caught in a brothel while he and his crew were off duty. Marinesco was deemed by the Soviet government as not suitable to be a hero of the Soviet Union. Instead of being awarded the title Hero of the Soviet Union for the sinking, he was awarded the Lesser Order of the Red Banner and downgraded to lieutenant, preventing him from receiving any further commands. He was dishonorably discharged from the Soviet Navy in October 1945. In 1960, Marinesco was reinstated to his original rank of Captain Third Class and granted a full pension. In 1963, he was given the traditional ceremony due a captain upon the successful return from a mission. He died 3 weeks later at the age of 50 from cancer. In 1990, Marinesco was posthumously named a Hero of the Soviet Union by Soviet General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev. Author Günter Grass, who wrote the 2002 novel Crab Walk about the sinking, said in an interview published by the New York Times in April 2003 that among his many reasons for writing the novel was to take the subject away from the extreme right. They said the tragedy of Wilhelm Gustloff was a war crime. It wasn't. It was terrible, but it was a result of war. A terrible result of war.